I'm Shailinda Hunter. The article that we have chosen to work with was called The Economic Impact of Genetically Engineered Crops. Now this paper presents economic research on the impacts of genetically engineered crops at the farm level, the factors that explain their adoption, impacts on prices, effects on welfare of various segments in the economy, as well as future prospects.
So genetic engineering began early in the 1990s and it has a variety of applications for agriculture. So there was three main goals. It's intended to improve the shelf life of products, it's improve the crop nitrogen fixation, and bolster control of agricultural pests.
There's two successful traits, insect resistance and herbicide tolerance. Insect-resistant traits program the crop plant to produce a naturally occurring chemical that is toxic to common insects. Herbicide-tolerant traits, on the other hand, permit the farmers to spray broad-spectrum chemicals. Both of these traits have been widely adopted in the production of corn, canola, cotton, and soybeans. The adoption of genetically engineered crops has extremely affected the economies of these crops, as well as the welfare of the farmers and the consumers.
Insect resistance. So actual crop output is equal to the potential crop output minus pest damage. So there's many different options for pest control, including pesticides, cultural practices, and genetic engineering traits. Insect-resistant traits boost output. They improve crop yield depending on the quality of seed germplasm that was inserted into. Yield drag may occur if a farmer switched the local seed cultivar in order to adopt insect resistance traits that are only available in the generic seed.
So herbicide-tolerant traits. They're thought to make damage control cheaper and easier, but not necessarily boost yields. They permit the substitution of broad-spectrum glyphosates, such as Monsanto's Roundup, for more targeted, toxic, and expensive chemicals that can kill specific weed species and leave the crop plants intact. The adoption of double cropping became possible with herbicide-tolerant soybean, due to fallow periods between crops being reduced with use of less toxic chemicals and improved control of late-season weeds. Increased adoption of no-tillage systems reduced fuel expenditures and effort, as well as reduced soil erosion.
Insect resistance versus herbicide tolerance. So global surveys show that insect-resistant traits have had a much bigger impact on yield than herbicide-tolerant traits, but both increase yield, especially in developing countries. Herbicide-tolerant traits do not constitute new mechanisms for damage control the way insect resistance do. Herbicide-tolerant traits require farmers to employ much of the same capital investment in weed control as used in conventional seed. However, insect-resistant traits require little capital and can substitute for chemical applications altogether. Herbicide-tolerant traits reduce the cost of chemical applications. They may cause an increase in the use of chemical control, which can lead to yield gains as damage declines. Insect-resistant traits also reduce damage for inputs used in pesticide applications, which could include machinery, fuel, and water.
Seed prices. Genetically engineered crop adoption does come at a price. Seed prices have increased with the introduction of genetically engineered technologies. The share of seed prices in overall production costs has also increased. Relative to 1994, seed prices have risen by 140%, while the index of input prices has risen by only 80%.
So there's many benefits. Many of the commercially available genetically engineered products have proven to be profitable for U.S. farmers, accounting for yield, cost, and other monetary effects. So it reduces management effort and work time, and helps with equipment saving. It's improved operator and worker safety, improved environmental safety. It's much more convenient, and it improves farm profitability while also reducing commodity prices.
The major difference in increasing productivity, reducing food prices, and improving environmental quality has happened through these traits. The commodity price inflation of 2007-2008, as well as the increased investments in biofuels, growing populations all around the world, and the concern about greenhouse gas emissions all suggest that an increase in agricultural productivity is essential. Genetically engineered crops are one technology that can contribute to productivity gains. There's always new traits in the works at various stages of development. These traits may contribute to improving feed and food quality, enhancing shelf life, as well as increasing drought tolerance. Expanding genetically engineered technologies requires continuous investment in researches and an economic and regulatory environment that will foster new developments.
Positive sustainability implications. So there is a large number of people who are malnourished and undernourished worldwide. There is also a great promise with genetically engineered traits to benefit not only farmers, but society on a whole. So one of the major benefits of this is feeding the world. These crops can lead to foods that feed the world in a more sustainable way. They also help improve shelf life, which makes it much easier to ship goods.
So just like everything else, there are projected risk implications. Many people talk about health risks that come with genetically engineered crops. Some say that they are inherently safe. However, there is no evidence that refined products derived from genetically engineered crops are any different from products derived from conventional crops. There's also talk of environmental risks. For example, there's accelerated development of resistance in several weed species. However, agribusiness companies have begun to develop new genetically engineered crops that are engineered particularly to tolerate the older, more toxic herbicides that farmers have turned to in order to fight back against the resistant weeds.
Okay, so this graph shows the increase in yield that has occurred with the introduction of genetically engineered crops. So the blue line here is the normal yield. The orange line is the increase that's happened with herbicide-tolerant introduced crops, and then the purple is the introduction of insect-resistant crops. So as you can see, there's a much bigger increase for insect resistance than herbicide tolerance, but both of them increase the yield.
So the cost of inputs increased with the introduction of genetically engineered crops because it costs more to produce genetically engineered seed, so therefore the seed must cost more to purchase. However, the introduction of genetically engineered crops leads to the reduction in chemical costs and the increase in yields as shown in the previous diagram. The increase in yields was significant enough that it will increase the revenues. So, although the costs may increase ever so slightly, the marginal revenue per unit rises more, notably giving the farmer a larger profit margin to work within, meaning the farmer can sell their commodity for a lower price and still turn a profit. As you can see here, the increased cost of seed plus decreased cost of chemicals equals cost of inputs remaining relatively the same. As well, profit increase equals the increase in marginal revenue with yield gains minus costs remain relatively the same.
Okay, so this graph talks about developing countries and how their large increase in population in countries such as India affect the demand and supply of genetically engineered commodities. So in countries like India, one of the big demands is soybeans. And so as the population increases, you see the demand shift up. So now it's here, which makes the price go up. Now the supply will also shift from here to meet the new demand, which will make the price stay relatively about the same.
Thank you.